Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Francesco Del Carpio. I'm the CFL York Operations Coordinator, and I would like to officially open the third session of our AI for Global Health Challenges and Lessons Learned speaker series with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge and recognize that many Indigenous nations have longstanding relationships with the territory upon which our campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. The area is known as Takaranto and has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities, and we acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the territory, which is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. As this is an online event and our participants may be joining from various locations, I strongly encourage you to learn about the traditional land upon which you are located. With this, I welcome our moderator, our speaker, and our participants from around the world. Welcome to our webinar. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our moderator, Dr. Blessing Ogbuokiri. Dr. Blessing Ogbuokiri is a postdoctoral fellow and instructor at York University. He has over 15 years of combined professional experience across a broad range of fields in academia, industry, and community-based organizations. He is a dynamic team player who is eager to utilize his diverse talents to advance in research and innovation. Dr. Ogbuokiri is interested in machine learning for health, data science for social good, social media computing, natural language processing, and theoretical computing. His goal is to actively collaborate with researchers in several interdisciplinary groups in using AI to help government and local communities to contain and manage the spread of community-based infectious disease outbreaks, such as COVID-19, malaria, and Mpox. Dr. Ogbuokiri, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning from wherever you connected today. We welcome you once again to the third section of the AI for PEP lecture series. We want to say a very big welcome to you. And I would like to give us just some few information that we're going to follow, like sort of the house rules for today. During the presentation, if you have any question, you could actually put it on the question and answer section, or you raise your hand to speak when the speaker finishes. I'll go ahead to introduce the speaker for today. Our speaker for today is Dr. Ignatius Ezeani. Dr. Ignatius Ezeani is a senior associate is a senior research associate at Lancaster University in the United Kingdom. He holds a bachelor's degree in computer science, a master's in advanced software engineering, and a PhD in natural language processing. He is interested in methods and techniques that support NLP for low resource, especially African languages. His work interfaces with other related areas like digital humanities, corpus, linguistics, distributional semantics, machine learning, data science, deep neural models, and general AI. He is also the Lacuna Fund Technical Advisor on LLP, as well as visiting senior lecturer at Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Awka, Nigeria. Let's make welcome Dr. Ignatius Ezeani. Dr. Ignatius, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Blessing. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Can I share my screen now, please? Please do let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, right. So I believe everyone else can. Okay. So thank you very much for inviting me over, Dr. Blessing and your team. It is really my pleasure to be here today to talk about a topic I'm actually quite interested in, which is a case for low resource languages. Okay, so today I'm going to be touching on a number of things related to the kind of work we do, or what the kind of advocacy we do on, ensuring that the models, the NLP models that we build today will support other languages apart from the big languages like English Spanish, French, and so on. All right, so without further ado, I don't know, I hope you can. So Blessing has also done some introductions. I don't have to waste time on this slide. This is me. I did a BSc in computer science, MSc in advanced software engineering, and a PhD in natural language processing. That's how I've progressed for the last over 2 decades. Okay, today I'm going to be generally following this loose outline, which will cover an overview of natural language processing. I don't know exactly the audience I'm talking to, but I know a number of you are probably aware of what we do in natural language processing. Some may also be experts. So permit me, if what I'm going to talk about here is below your level or above your level. I try not to be not to be technical at all in any of the discussions that I'm doing, but to see if we can take most of the audience along in this journey. But if you do have questions in that direction after the talk, then we can talk about that. So we're going to be looking at the overview, then we'll look at diversity and bias in NLP in general, not as it relates to health, but in NLP in general. We're going to also be looking at my suggestions on how to mitigate biases and strategies for inclusive NLP. Okay, so on the overview of NLP, I want to talk about what NLP is, and then why we need NLP, why it is difficult, and touch on some of the application areas of NLP. So what is NLP? NLP, you could approach it from any angle, but the way I want to look at it is as a subfield of computer science, which basically focuses on languages, on processing of natural languages. By natural language, you mean languages spoken by human beings. Most often than not, it deals with texts when NLP started, but you can see that with current technology, we are actually mixing up multimodal approaches to NLP, which is looking at images and videos and sound and speech as well. The key aim of NLP is to try to understand human language. So we have to build systems that will read whatever we write or say or paint or take an image of, or even video. We want systems that will be able to understand that, and also, if needs be, generate natural language. So why do we need it? The problem is that there are so many, we all live on the internet now, and there's so many, a lot of data we generate on the internet by us using our devices, and it increases by the day. And in these text or audio or video data on the internet, we have massive amount of information that we can use in whatever area we are interested in. So for instance, we're talking about pandemic prediction or management and so on. Activities happening online on social media platforms might tell us what's going on in a certain place and how to react and so on. It will not be possible because these are mostly unstructured data in text and speech and all that. It will not be possible to process them without some form of NLP technique that will be able to get into it and extract these information and structure it in a way that the machine can understand and make sense of it. So we basically need NLP to extract meaningful patterns from this pile. And we also want to structure this format in a way that it will be easy for us to train models that will understand the language and do with it whatever we want, okay? So why is NLP difficult? NLP is difficult because human language is, human language is not as straightforward as you expect it to be. When we speak it, it's easy for us. We learn it. We understand the nuances of the language, but the machine doesn't. So we have to find a way to bridge the gap between how the machine interprets what is read and how a human being can actually look at it. So if you look at some of these examples here, these are some of the typical headlines you might see in a newspaper or online news platform. And when you say something like Ukraine had 6 arms or 6 arms, what does it mean? What does head and arm mean? Does it, for human beings, we will move from the biological or physical body part head to understand that the head of Ukraine or the leader or the president of Ukraine is different from a human head or an arms and so on. Stolen painting found by the tree. So the thematic role that's happening here, who found what? Is the painting found by a tree or by is the tree the location and so on? And then things like that, nude dance, ban on nude dancing on the governor's desk and so on. So you can go on and on with some of these examples. And that is why it is difficult. It's not as straightforward as you will expect it to be. And like I said, you are trying to extract this information from unstructured data, unstructured text and data. Okay, so so the summary of that is that language evolves, new words are constantly being introduced. The passing rules are very flexible. So some of the words that went in the dictionary like 5 years ago are now in the dictionary. Some of the previous ones are being modified. The words that were clearly nouns can be verbified, if you like, and so on. So it's important that we keep following that trend as we develop systems that understand the way language is constructed and used. So for instance, this example here, the co-reference is the way this is said, the ball did not fit in the box because the box was too, whatever ends this statement determines whether we're talking about the ball or the box. If we say that the ball did not fit in the box because it was too big, then it becomes the ball we're talking about. If we said it was too small, then it becomes the box. So these kind of things and extracting entities in text, trying to find out who has done what, are some of the things that make NLP difficult for us to play with. So we can also have idioms like kicking the bucket or kicking the ball and so on. All right. So some applications of NLP include things like question answering. So you give a piece of text from an article or something to your NLP tool that's trained to understand and answer questions. And you do ask it a question based on what the text contains, and then you get some answer. We want that to happen because sometimes, like I said, the amount of information that we're dealing with, we're being overloaded by information. So sometimes you just basically want to grab the answer to the question you are interested in and move on. I believe some of us here have played with GPT, ChatGPT 3, and maybe 4 now that came out last week. And it is actually redefining the way we search for things. So you're no longer interested in going on Google and getting a list of ranked web pages, but you want to actually target specific information, if possible, get it from multiple sources, synthesized for you and presented to you. So it's something that's very good to have. The other things that we can do with NLP is, obviously, we've played with different kinds of machine translation as we started with some people who went to different countries, whether they speak Spanish or Portuguese or whatever. And of course, so far we have a lot of tools that will help us to translate from one language to the other if we find ourselves in a place where we don't speak the language. We're making progress with also speech translation. So you actually talk or speak to your device, and your device speaks back in the language that or speaks back to someone else in the language that the person understands, and this is the way it goes. So you basically move from, a number of things are happening in this diagram. So we have a speech recognition system transferring the audio speech to text. And then we have the text-to-text machine translation, which also goes back to text-to-speech and so on. These kinds of things are things that we do with NLP. Okay, we can also look at an image and then begin to, extract the components of that image. For instance, identify that there is a man in this image, and possibly that the man is holding something, and maybe mention that the man is holding a piece of banana. And we can look at the weather from this image and decide whether it's raining or not. And we can, also get other interesting information like whether the guy has 50-50 vision and so on. So it's not just text, it's also, like I said, multimodal. Okay, so I know that this platform is interested in what NLP can do in the health area, maybe. And I also extracted a few examples. So in clinical documentation improvement, we can use NLP to analyze and improve clinical documentation, and then we can capture more accurate information about patients and improve the quality of care. So you see why it's important that it's not something we develop for a group of people and then the other group of people do not have access to that. Okay, so in decision support, we can also analyze patients' data and then decide the kind of support that those patients can be given. Okay, and we can also, NLP can also help in so many ways in also monitoring the patient. The sound or the speech that comes from a patient might tell us what's going on, and how their care could be changed, or how much attention that they need. By the way, I don't watch the chat, so just in case if there's any question, please somebody should to shout at me. All right. Okay. So what about bias? So I hope this section has given us a brief overview of what we do with NLP. What about bias? Before I deal with bias, let me discuss how NLP is generally built. So everything we see, NLP is, I haven't actually mentioned here, but I'm sure people may be aware that NLP is also part of AI, all right? So it's a specific aspect of AI that focuses on languages, human languages. And in general, building AI models will loosely follow these steps. So we collect data, we process data, we extract features from the data that are important. A lot of the things that come with our data will be noise, so we don't actually need them, but we extract features. Depending on what you want to do, you modify your feature extraction process to capture the kind of things you're interested in. Then we have machine learning algorithms that help us to train or build the model, the final, program, if you like, that does that thing that you want it to do. So that's model training, call it. And there are so many machine learning algorithms that help us to do that. I won't go into all those now. And then you evaluate. So when you collect this data, you keep a portion of your data, a small portion, sometimes 10% or 20 at most of your data, to, if you're working with static data. If it's something that is real-time flowing in, then you have to also adjust the training process. You use that portion to evaluate the performance. So the idea is that while you are training the model, you don't want the model to see a part of. So that's how you actually mimic or simulate the real world. You don't want it to see a part of the evaluation data. And then you evaluate. If it does well on the evaluation data, you say, okay, well, yeah, it's doing well. I can deploy it for people to use. That's the process. So I don't know, but from these processes, you can begin to think about where bias might set in. Okay. So, like I said, we in NLP specifically, we are collecting language data. So the first thing we do is to collect data set, text data that's representative of the languages that we are interested in building the model for. And like I said, the model will be any of these NLP tasks that we're interested in. I talked about question answering, speech to text, machine translation, and any of these other things that we want to do. And then we pre-process it. We do feature extraction, we do model training, and then we do model evaluation, as I explained. The biases in NLP can come from the human-generated data because we are all biased already. The society life is generally biased, okay? So we have everything between racism to misogyny to, you know, any kind of gender bias against disabled people, and indeed against other languages. Sometimes we don't know how to deal with this language issue, but we do have that. So when you, for instance, collect a lot of data from the internet, like I said earlier, that most of the major models that we use in the world are actually trained by collecting data from the internet. When you do that, a lot of the world languages are already excluded. When you collect data from the internet or maybe from social media, when you do that, a lot of the people who are not on social media are already excluded and so on. So we're generally inherently biased. So you have to be very intentional in trying to design a process that debiases your system a little, okay? So yeah, sometimes these biases are difficult to detect. You might take deploying it for real use in real life to be able to find them out. So we keep developing techniques that will help us do that. The reason I'm interested in focusing on this kind of research, not just me, a lot of other people in this area, is that it is become obvious within the last few years that a lot of the effort, resources, money, time that's going into NLP work is focusing on, it's not paying enough attention to the global south, right? If you see what I mean. The challenge is that obviously the tools that we'll create will obviously not be useful or not be easily applied or deployed in those settings. So I think this was taken in 2019. It may have changed now, but I can assure you it hasn't changed much. And these are major NLP conferences, SCL, NACO. Those of you who've been to those conferences will understand what I'm talking about. And we found out that majority of the papers that came to that conferences, the author affiliations, are not from the South, okay? Majority, a very wide majority. And if you look at the language map, you will see that clearly Africa, for instance, is struggling, and the rest of the South are struggling. Indeed, most of the world was struggling as at 2019. It's changed a little bit for the better, not a lot, yeah. So this is also another research that showed us how well some languages are doing, you know, all over the world. By the way, there are, I don't know if I have it have any slide for that, but there are about 7,000 languages in the world. So, and you can count on one of your fingers, or maximum two, the languages that are represented in the NLP world. So the languages that are, so the group called 5, that is the winners, are the languages that are often well represented in the NLP research. The rest of the languages are either scraping by or they are trying their best and so on. And these efforts are made by those who are passionate about those languages, because the drivers of these technologies are, I don't know, they are a bit more focused on the commercial output from their work rather than social good. And that's why we're trying to tilt back the focus, okay? So you can also look at the current state of the multilingual language models that we've got so far. Another recent work that was done, I think, last year. So you see where languages like GPT-3, T5, sorry, not languages, models, like the popular models that drive some of the things that we do now, are not paying attention at all to the diversity of the world languages. So they're focusing so much on English, most of them, and then a few other big languages. We think that will be a problem. Ultimately, you are marginalizing the people that are already being marginalized. Okay. So yeah, if you want to read, because my area is not in health, so some of the examples I have will be in general NLP. Yeah, if you want to look at the bias on facial recognition technology, for instance, again, this will not be anything to do specifically with language, but the images that you collect. You can look at this Netflix coded bias movie by one of our colleagues, Joy. But I don't know if you have seen it. If you haven't seen it, you try and see it whenever you can. But it transcends beyond text. That's actually the point that I'm making, and language to go into other things like the face color or your race or the color of your skin. Again, another thing that's of interest to me, because I'm dealing with bias in general, then I'll come back to the key topic of today. Another thing that I'm interested in is this recidivism algorithm that was once found to be extremely biased. Got two offenders. One committed 4 minor juvenile misdemeanors and one committed armed robbery attempt and all that. But the algorithm thought that the guy on my left, or your left, depending on where your left is now, the guy will be a low risk offender, and the other one will be a high risk offender. The priors, that is, if you look at what they have committed, it will make sense to you that the person that will be higher risk offender will be the guy and not the lady. But ultimately, the algorithm said something else. It may not be the intention of the developers of this algorithm to create something that will give this result, but it does happen because of the data that they built their algorithm on. Okay, there was at some point a recruitment tool developed by Amazon, which ultimately they had to pull out, because anytime you mention in your CV that anything that relates to you being a lady or a woman or something like that, it throws you out. So things like that happen, and you will expect that Amazon knows this. Well, this happened a few years ago, so I'm sure that they won't be building systems like that, but they pulled it out. So that's what bias can do. I'm going to put 3 more slides that will show bias, so we can go back to inclusive mechanisms. This is the Lion 400 open data set that was released in 2021. I think they have an updated version now, but I just want to use this for demonstration's sake. So the idea is that there will be 400 million image text pairs. So they have an image, and the image, the tool tells them what the caption of the image should be. Okay. And just a sec. Sorry about that. Kids are back from school. So yeah, so they drew that from Common Crawl, and OpenAI, the same OpenAI that does GPT for us, they did the clip tools to in a way they had to use OpenAI to remove any similarity score, that because you again score the similarity of the embeddings. I don't want to go into the technicalities too much, but the thing is, anyone that is not like a very close match to the titling, remove it. That's what they did. And guess what the results said? When they brought this picture and gave to the tool, the tool said that this is a portrait of, so it should be a portrait of an American, well, it said an American. So these are the two top results that came from the tool. So if you see what I mean, if you look at the similarity scores, if you find out that the tool will actually select the description below as the description. So which means he doesn't understand that it's an astronaut and this is a woman that's an astronaut. You don't understand that it's a photograph of a smiling housewife in an orange jumpsuit, which I believe you understand what that means, with an American flag and so on. So you see that it's clearly biased there. This is another example where it thinks that, so the description, if you understand what I'm trying to explain, the description on top, which is A and B, the one that's called A will not be seen because they say remove everything that is less than 0.3, so it won't be seen. What will be seen is that this is the portrait of the first ever illegal president of the United States, born in Kenya and so on. So that is what bias can do. So it matters really, because if this is about life and death, definitely it will lump some people in one side and the others in the other place. Okay, so let's have a quick look at biases in healthcare. We have electronic health records that can be biased. So if you use that in extracting and building your NLP tools, you're likely going to get, I don't know, wrong results from them. So again, if you collect data that are ethnically biased or racially biased, and you build a model on them without trying to find a way to detect and correct those biases, you are likely going to get bad results. Gender biases, language biases, and any other group that have limited representation, including disabled people. Obviously, like when I'm talking about languages and language tools, it is extremely important that people with different levels of disability, from physical disability, who cannot walk around, who want to probably use their voice to automate their system, maybe open their phone and things like that, or switch on their lights and so on. It's important that they have access to these tools. If these tools understand certain accents and not others, then it's going to be a problem. Okay, so you have to make sure you represent that very well. Yeah, I'm coming. Can you give me a second just for me? Okay, yeah, go on. I would have to go on. Okay, so based on these biases that I just mentioned, you will find out that in terms of what you can do with NLP, these are things you can do with NLP. In terms of what you can do with NLP, you have to make sure you ask fundamental questions when you want to apply the NLP techniques in doing certain things. In pandemic management, for instance, in early detection, the first question you ask yourself is, the data you know you can collect from social media, how representative are they? If you want to use sentiment analysis to find out who's actually expressing panic and fear around in a pandemic within the area that expressing that kind of thing, and how you want to deploy support and resources to help them, the question will be, what about those who are not online, for instance? Are there other ways we can extract what's going on there and help them? So that goes with risk assessment, that goes with information extraction, that goes with translation. Like I said, in translation, you have to be very sure that the languages spoken by the locals that you're targeting in the countries that you're working can be supported by the tools and technologies that you're using. So, so what do we do then? My suggestion will be that in designing the whole process of data collection and building and training our models, we must we must adopt a participatory approach. We must make sure that we involve people from the communities who are interested in, not just who are interested in the stakeholders, the communities that are represented in the population that we are working for. We must make sure that what we are building are useful and impactful for them and in their communities. So we must ensure that the speaker, so I talk about speaker because I talk about language more than the health aspect of things, but they all go together. We have to foster collaboration. So it's not just something that will happen. They have to be involved, and they have to keep going back and forth in making sure that we are collecting the right kind of data, and we are asking questions about what they actually need. We don't have to impose anything, and then we have to make sure that our interests are more or less ratified by their own interests as well as we go on doing the work we're doing in those areas. All right, so in looking at the stakeholders, they have to be diverse. We have to keep looking at different demographics and representing them in what we are doing. We have to also consider there are biases that we cannot actually easily mitigate. For instance, we can't force everybody to be on the internet and then get represented. Even if we do, we can't get all the languages to be supported immediately by the tools and technologies of today so that we can capture as much data as we can. But we can make sure that if we're gonna produce tools, that we'll find a way to balance the collection and focus on a balanced set of the collection, and then try and see how our tools are behaving as we deploy them to use, and keep modifying them, you know. Also, the training and evaluation, I mentioned that at the end will be one place to start, but over time you have to keep monitoring your system. The moment it veers off and starts producing things that show that it's actually a biased system, you need to review your techniques and rebuild the system. So the monitoring is of essence. Sometimes we deploy systems and we let them run, and they run for a long time, and even the topology of the environment they are running in will change, and then they may not be able to pick it up if they're not being modified. Okay, so we also have to address the ethical and legal issues. The data collection should follow ethical level standards. Individuals should understand how their data will be used. We have to be open and transparent. It doesn't matter where we are working and what their policies and rules are. In most of the Western countries, things are properly defined. In Europe here, we have GDPR. You have to make sure that if you are working in other climes, that you also bring those things on board as well, and pay people properly. The other thing is that sometimes we do collect this, we sponsored it, and we paid for it, and we collect it, and then we lock it away for people who can use it. So we have to make sure that whatever data we collect are also accessible and sustainable. That way, it means that even when we are building our tools with what we have collected, we will allow other researchers to also work on the data we have collected and possibly build more robust and more sensitive tools to some of the things we are talking about. We won't lock it away behind paywalls. So yeah, in summary, I think we are all biased. There is no question about that. Depending on what our backgrounds are, we're biased. The data we're going to collect will be biased because we generated those data, so they will be biased. The model we will be training the data on will also be biased, okay? So information access will also introduce bias. Like I said, even when everything is fine, the access to the information and the way people interpret and process things may also be biased. So we have to start addressing this through diversity. We have to be very intentional in making sure that we have the diversity hats on each time we're dealing with some of these things, and focus on transparency, advocacy, and auditing. Okay, where we are dealing with more than just text and we're dealing with voice, we have to even be more concerned about the layers of potential biases that we'll also introduce. Okay, I have given like 2 interviews to BBC on some of these things. The link is here. I'll share. I hope I'm allowed to share the slides later, and so you can also listen to some of the other things that I think about these things, and also you see where I'm going with it. Okay. Finally, I want to end on this. Ngugi wa Thiong'o said that the effect of a cultural bomb is to annihilate a people's belief in their names, in their languages, in their environment, in their heritage of struggle, in their unity, in their capacities, and ultimately in themselves. So beyond technology and what technology will do for us, it is important, I believe, that we take everybody on board as we journey along this technological advancement path. That way, it will be easy for us to bridge the gap, the digital gap between the West and the South. So I will stop here because my time's gone. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have questions, I'm here to answer.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Ignatius Ezeani. Thank you for your presentation, interesting presentation. Wow. It is interesting to know that natural language processing is a subfield of AI, and it has evolved over time. It has passed beyond being a text processing to videos and audios. And it's also interesting to know that, the fact that it is NLP does not make it that simple. It is actually very difficult because there are a lot of ambiguities, different languages with different meanings, and on all that. This is also what makes it not to be very straightforward, according to Dr. Ezeani. And Dr. Ezeani also, brought to our notice that language evolves, which is true. Language actually evolves. We know that every day for English, for instance, English people, there's an improvement, there's an update on the English dictionary almost every year. And in terms of the application of natural language processing, he made mention of question answering, from question answering to speech processing, translation, image understanding, and clinical support, which is where most of us are very much interested in. How we can actually use, natural language processing to decolonize research, especially in the global South. How can we use natural language processing to be able to, gather locally relevant data and use it to complement existing data to be able to profile solution or even make prediction or get an insight for pandemic preparedness or existing outbreaks. We also talked about how we can build models, starting from data collection, data processing, feature extraction, model training, and evaluation of the model. He went further to discuss about the biases, which is very much interesting. There are a lot of conferences that go on where you don't see most people from the global South to be part of it, especially in this area of AI and natural language processing. And that's a big bias, where decisions are made, where discussions of the new generation research is done. People from the global South are not always part of the discussion. So how are they going to actually talk about their problems and for it to be included into the discussion. And the current state also talked about the current state of the bias right now, talking about the issue of bilingual, where most models are basically done with English, for instance, or the 4 major languages that the world, or 4 biggest languages in the world, which could be English, Spanish, Spanish, Portuguese, and other ones. So it's also very important that this biases also has come into health care, which Dr. Ezeani also mentioned in terms of gender biases, language barriers, and limited representation. And that is also very, very key. So if we are in the global south, be it Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, the Caribbean, even in the Asian, when you're collecting data, you need to also consider these biases and their effects. It's also very important when it comes to pandemic management, early detection, sentiment analysis. You need to consider all that. He mentioned how we can identify biases in data, that we should also try when you build your models, whatever kind of models, as far as it has to do with human data or any kind of data, whether be it social media or the data that you collected from your local community, you should also make sure that there should be model evaluation and monitoring. He also talked about the ethical issues and how you can handle that. I think that is very straightforward enough. In summary, he said, that is Dr. Ezeani, ended up with the fact that we all are biased. And if we all as human beings are biased, then data can also be biased. That is a very key one. So at this juncture, I would like to take some questions. I would say, first of all, thank you, Dr. Ezeani, for your insightful presentation. I would like to take some questions. I'll read them out to you, then you take them one after the other. So this question is coming from Olayinka Yusuf. He said, ChatGPT gives incorrect or non-existing reference and citations most of the time. Why is this so?
Okay. So you want me to take the question? Can you hear me still? Because I seem to have lost control of my...
I hear you very well.
All right. You remember that ChatGPT, the version that's available for people to play with now, was trained on a dump that was collected 2 years ago. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So one is that, again, you don't expect it to be perfect. ChatGPT is an auto-completion tool, more or less. So it's a generative model. So what it does is it begins to take the probability, I'm just trying to oversimplify it, take the probability of the first token coming out. By that, I mean the first word. And then the next word, what's the probability of the next word coming in and on. That's how it actually builds its own, how it generates language. So it's possible that it will generally create links that are non-existent, like you said. It's also possible that those links were existing when it was trained with them, like 2 years ago. ChatGPT is no longer on the internet, or rather, the ChatGPT is not working on any data on the internet beyond 2021. So any of these could be the reason. But again, it goes back to the point I was actually making. These are tools. We can rely on these tools without having our own agency in knowing what we should do. Okay. I just hope that's answered your question to some extent.
All right. Thank you very much for your question. I will now move to the next question, which says from Lengali Dlamini. Lengali Dlamini says that we built model. Sorry, let me see if I'm good. Okay, it says, is the research able to train NLP to synthesize communicative language, or for now, it is focused mainly on recall/direct form of language communication? I will repeat that. is the research able to train NLP to synthesize communicative languages, sorry, or for now, it is focused mainly on recall/direct form of language communication?
I don't know if I understand the question. If it comes, I don't. The question was about
what this person is trying to say is that if it's more of synthesizing the language. If the NLP is focused on synthesizing languages, that is trying to recall or direct, that if there is a form of language communication NLP, I think there is language communication NLP.
Yeah, I wanted to say, because just in case he's he's going in another direction. If he has used ChatGPT, I'm sure that to some extent he will be impressed with the extent to which it kind of remembers. Well, I don't know if that's what he's calling recall now, but it's not basically about going through the history of the chart and picking up tokens and playing with it. It does more than that. It's in the context. So it remembers what you have discussed with it. So it does some sort of communicative interaction with you with a very wide ability, with an ability to cover a wide context, within your chart. It does that. So research is progressing in that direction. Research is doing its best to get the machine to get to the cognitive level of language understanding that humans are already right now possessing. Okay, so saying that will be like, yes, that's where research is going. Have we got there yet? Not yet, but are we making very serious improvement? I can tell you we are, apart from OpenAI's work. Google is also working on something. Facebook is also working on something. So we're moving towards a time when, if ChatGPT, for instance, it has actually aced so many of these exams that human beings were using to judge their level of intelligence and knowledge. So it's doing quite well. It does, and it doesn't matter how far you push it, it's doing quite well. But actually, if you look down deep, just like the first question came in, you find out where it's also blundering, So we need to take all those on board. But for me, I think that the way you will be looking at what they are doing is what impact is it actually creating in your area? We're talking about healthcare, and we're talking about pandemic management and all that. How well can we deploy these things apart from tools that we can play with and we get excited about what they are doing? They have to actually help us in real life to solve real life problems, okay? And they're not toys we want to play with in the West. People do not have access to healthcare. They do not have access to clean water. They do not. How do we use these things to find out where there is a need and then support them? That's the way I'm thinking about that. But I think I deviated a little bit. The answer to your question will be yes, in my view. Yeah, unless I didn't get to your question.
All right. Thank you very much for the answer that you gave. I would like to take another question from Francis Anokie. Francis says, we build models with data that are generated from the real world, which is very biased or unfair. So in our efforts to eliminate the biases inherited by these data, are we not modeling something different from what the actual world actually represents in the data? Why do we need an impartial model when the actual world system generating the data is biased?
Very, very interesting question. Yes, very, very interesting question. Thank you for that question. Why do we need an impartial model when the real world is partial or biased? The thing is, I think we actually need an impartial real world. There is a prediction that in a few years' time, maybe in a decade or so, most of the data we will be dealing with will be synthetic data. That's actually generated by AI models. if the real world is bad and the AI models learn to do to be fair and balanced and impartial, then maybe our world will be better. If what we can do with AI model is to teach the real world how to move against our normal I don't know, way of being biased to become good, that's something good. So the thing is, you don't want to be at the other end of the biases. You don't want to be someone who's receiving the negative effects of racism or misogyny or anything. You don't want to be that. So definitely, we need to protect people who are struggling in our world to make the world a fairer place. And now that models are coming out, we don't want to propagate these biases we have as human beings onto the models we are building. We have to be intentional. That's why we're doing that. It's important. Otherwise, then we exacerbate the problem. We make it worse. And it's not going to be easy for everybody, because there will be, I mean, no matter what you are, if you are not so let's say you don't struggle with racism, maybe you are struggling with misogyny. Let's say you don't struggle with both of them, maybe you will be disabled at some point. Do you understand? So we're trying to, nobody is completely away from some sort of bias or the other. So we're trying to make sure that the models we're building will bring in those, I don't know, ideal kind of principles that we hope that we have, which we don't have as human beings, and correct ourselves if that's what we manage to achieve. That's the way I'm looking at it. That's why I think it is something worth doing. I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you very much for the answer. I'll take another question. I think someone raised their hand before. Let me see, before I take another question, I'll see if someone raised their hand. So if you want to speak, you can raise your hand, then I'll allow you to speak. While we do that, let me go ahead with the next question, which says, okay, this is from James Kumar Parasura. He says, unlike other science disciplines, getting factual labeled health data is a major hurdle. Any suggestion for long-term investment in AI for public health?
Like I said, my work is not in core health area, but for AI data in general, I don't know. I think it depends on what you want to get. I mean, I wish you can give me a little more background to your question. Investment. I can tell you that there are a number of people. I know I work as a technical advisor to Lacuna, and I'm working on the language area, but they're also funding data collection in health, in agriculture, and others. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the key principle here will be to make sure that we have defined what we want and we've understood the communities and the stakeholders we want to work with, and then we can go for it. Do you understand? So like I said, I don't have the background to your question, but I think it's already happening that factual, we're not sure. Of course, there will be some errors, but to get to the correct thing, as close as possible to the correct thing, I'm sure that once we get down to the communities, which sometimes some of the funders don't bother with, you give a researcher some money somewhere, and maybe even outside the community that they're working for, and then they give some contractor somewhere. They're not interfacing directly with the communities. They're not going to get something factual. So you need to interface with the community, and you understand the nature and format of the data that you want to collect. And that will help you even to design the method to collect it. So if you want to get, say, audio data to find out how people are responding to certain audio tool that will tell you what's happening somewhere, you have to also think about whether the language you're targeting, whether it has dialects across different places, regions where people speak various dialects of that language, and how we are going to make sure that they're all incorporated in the data set you're collecting for the building. So you define these things. Once you define what you need to get and the nature of your research and I don't know, problems, then you identify the stakeholders and the communities that are going to work with, and work directly with them as much as you can. It might cost a little more, but you work directly with them so you get what you want. Okay, so that's what I would suggest. So, but we can carry on chatting about this if there are specifics you want me to hit on.
All right, thank you. I'd like to take some questions from those who want to speak. I have two people here that raised their hands, Joel Wakire and Olayinka Yusuf. So we're going to take it as I mentioned the names. So we'll start with Joel Wakire. Then Joel, over to you right now. Please, Joel, your question.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here. My question is around the issue of responsibility, because my question was drawn from the statement of data, and my little research and information I have shows that data mostly drives whatever, even the model behavior. So I'm trying to ask, what can we do to ensure that those AI developers, especially here we're talking about decolonization, that we ensure that there is responsibility on the part of the developers and the data collectors to be responsible? Are there ways we can validate data before they are used to train the models? Because the models will behave the way the data we have collected. That is a question, because I'm coming from responsible AI, which we know the ethics is there.
Yeah. Okay, can I respond now?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Joel. That's a very, very interesting question. There is a slide where I talked about ethics and legal issues and so on. And these things vary from region to region. You know, what we have in Europe may be different from what we have in that, but ultimately it's basically to protect everybody, including those you're collecting the data from, and then protect all of us, all right? This is an ongoing work. You know, there is still, I don't know, a tug of war between those who really want to run with the development and get things done quickly, and those who want to make sure that things are done ethically and legally, right? And we keep, you know, like if you get on ChatGPT, they will say, well, our tool has these limitations. It can be biased, it can be this, it can be that. That's more like a caveat, just to kind of pull themselves away for any kind of legal. So I think it has to continue. You have to continue your work on that, Joel, in responsible AI. You have to, where we are now, we cannot, I mean, it may be difficult. I mean, there have been a lot of recommendations, but it may be difficult to kind of pause, look at the data and all the biases before you deploy. But there are certain things you have to check. Like I was talking about balancing things and making sure that you cover your ground in terms of the collection of demographics and so on. The other one is when the model is trained, before you deploy it to use, you evaluate and monitor and make sure that some of the red flags do not fire and things like that. Then you deploy, and you deploy with a caveat also. You deploy with saying, we cannot guarantee that this is like one, you know, a silver bullet that will solve all problems, has no problem itself. You have to deploy that. People will be aware, don't overclaim. People will be aware that it could fail in some ways. I'm not an expert in that area in responsible AI. I'm just, my work kind of intersects with that as well. But I understand where you're coming from. I think it's going to be everybody working together on this. So now that ChatGPT keeps developing things, there are people whose job is to go and trip the system over, and they are publishing what they have got. I think 2 days ago or so, Noam Chomsky published something on, I think, New York Times about how bad the system is in general and so on. And we keep collecting these things. Hopefully the developers will keep collecting this. And I told you that Amazon had to pull down their system because people flagged up some of the things that they probably didn't detect when they were testing the models. So everybody will have to be on board with this, okay? That's my view. We cannot stop because there are good things coming from these tools as well. And I'll suggest that we keep the good things while making sure that we block off whatever bad things that they might throw up.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Olayinka Yusuf, if you're there, I'll hand over the microphone to you right now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. I was one that asked a question about ChatGPT given incorrect references and inaccessible DOIs. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I found it to be very, very interactive. That even when it gives such, and I tell you that, oh, the DOI you gave is not correct, it will apologize. The reference you gave is not existing, it will apologize, and then still try to bring more. In fact, recently, I just kept telling it was giving wrong thing, and it kept apologizing and kept bringing more and more and more. And then none of these things were correct. I could get an idea to why this is so based on your previous response. However, when Bing Chat came on board, I felt some lot of relief because I felt that, okay, Bing Chat is directly linked to the internet, while ChatGPT is just limited to what had been existing for about maybe 2021, for instance. So, yeah. but invariably, when I tried some things that I did on ChatGPT on Bing Chat, I realized that it is nowhere close to it at all. I would have expected if those that develop Bing Chat would make it as interactive, as responsive, and they will also make it as the kind of a communicative ability that ChatGPT has. If Bing Chat could have such, in addition to it being linked to the internet directly, then that would have really been a very good thing. But I realized that I wouldn't know if Professor Ezeani has really, maybe looked more at Bing Chat to maybe he can really be able to see something in between. But I'm looking to a future that would we will have a kind of ChatGPT that can be directly linked to the internet, because what it has at the moment is very, very superb, but it just needs to be linked to the internet so as to be able to give more, more correct information. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, disclaimer: I'm not part of OpenAI. Neither am I part of Big. So, yeah. But you're right. Yeah. I think some of these feedback are what there is a reason why they decided to block off the data collection timeline for ChatGPT. They've got the excitement that they want. ChatGPT 4 is now released. I don't think they're making it, people need to queue up to be given access to test it. And that's what's going on now. Hopefully it will be better at that. Hopefully it's trained with, I don't know, I've not read the details to know whether the data is more current or not. However, yeah, these tools have their uses. I'm sure that they're all going to be bringing in this feedback that we are giving. Everybody's online criticizing and praising at the same time these things, and they are taking them on board, because remember that for them it's a commercial process and they are looking at the competition as well. So they always want to push something in first and grab the attention of people and then correct it later. That it has always been that. For us, we are not going to be chasing it like that. For us, deploying it, say, in healthcare, in agriculture, in education, we want to make sure that it is the part that works and that is robust that we're deploying to achieve what we want. And then we want to make sure we retain some agency for ourselves, just like you're doing now. You are looking at this and saying, "This, oh, hang on, this is not working very well." We don't want to take them all line, hook, and sinker. Yeah, I'm sure they will take on board whatever it will take to improve their system so that there will be the competition. I'm sure that they will do that. This discussion is about making sure that in doing that, you don't marginalize a section of the society more. You know, like I said, I will be interested in them trying to deal with other languages rather than making it look more sleek. And you know, why will some old woman in some parts of Malawi not be able to speak to these systems in a language that they're interested in, and then get some information as well about how their palm fruit will be protected from some pest attack, whatever, you know? So these are some of the things I'm thinking about. For us, we play with it as if they're toys for us, and we're excited when we discuss it on Twitter. That's beautiful. But beyond that, like my friend was talking about responsible AI, I also think that there has to be social goods and has to be impact attached to it almost immediately. And it is not behind the paywall. Yeah. But yeah, they spend money building it, so they want to make money as well. But, I will be thinking about how it will be useful to us. But yeah, so that's my comment. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. I think that answers it for Olayinka. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes, I would like
the old hand up, Olayinka.
Yes, that's the old hand up. Okay, yeah. So I'd like to go to some of the questions on the question and answer session. I'll pick another question. This is yes, Kuma. I think I've answered your. I think Dr. Ezeani has answered your question before. He said, "Could we say having labeled data?"
If he has another one, that's fine, unless there's no
AI. So I'm going to take it together with two more questions. This says, this is Oluwafemi Adebayo and Bernard Ephraim. So Oluwafemi Adebayo is asking, natural language processing is difficult. Can Dr. Ezeani talk about motivating factor in his journal? I think he sent another question, or she, I don't know, sent another question. He says, correct, natural language processing is difficult. Can Dr. Ezeani talk about motivating factor in his journey? How did you become an expert? So I think you take this, when you answer it, then I will ask, I will read Bernard Ephraim's question. So Oluwafemi's question is what you're answering now. Over to you, sir.
Okay, what motivated me into natural language processing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to be honest, just like everybody who's got up to my age and career level, there are so many things that happen by chance. Yeah, the thing is, I wanted to do a PhD. I was doing a PhD in Nigeria. I'm originally from Nigeria. I was doing a PhD, and at some point I felt I wasn't getting what I wanted, and I wanted another PhD. I wanted a PhD in a place where, you know, you kind of get what you want, if you like. And I began to research, and I found out that NLP is a thing. Indeed, there was a colleague of mine, actually, who was already doing a research in NLP. He was also new in the area. Especially for African languages, there was nothing in African languages, nothing in the language we were working on. So we felt that there was a gap. So that kind of, because if you're looking for a research work to do, so sometimes one of the key problems is identifying the gap. So it was like an obvious gap for us. Nothing is here for our language. And NLP hasn't actually progressed this way. It wasn't even taken seriously, even in the other, even in computing. So I went in, and then we began to fumble with it, to kind of try to find out how to begin to make impact. It took me going to a number of conferences, meeting people who are also thinking the way we're thinking and setting up. I think one of the key events will be the trip to South Africa when we did the 2018 Indaba, a blessing you were there. That was where I also met a lot of people. And from there, we met in 2019 again in Italy for ACL conference. And that gave rise to the Masakane research community, which is basically focusing on NLP for African languages. Okay, so we went to that ACL conference, and it was obvious. That's the chart I gave you here. It was obvious that Africa wasn't represented at all. And we said, okay, why don't we come together? What's the challenge? The challenge is that we can't go to these conferences because you struggle to get the money for flight tickets. You struggle to even get the visa to attend these conferences. So you don't know what's going on. Why don't we create something local? Indaba was an idea that some people, got to bring something close to us. I mean, things have changed since 2018 to now, a lot. People now have more access to stuff. And COVID came, and people were people were attending these conferences virtually as well. So yeah, it's been a long journey, and I wouldn't tell you that I planned to get in here. But I happen to be here, and since I came in here, it's been one challenge after the other, so it's quite exciting. I've stayed on. Hopefully, I will stay for longer and leave my mark before I leave. Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. I'll take Bernard's question right now. Bernard Ephraim says, what are the major challenges African language face in their NLP implementation? So I think this is not just African languages. In this answering this question, I'm just giving you a heads up. It should be basically in the global South. People in the Caribbean, are they being represented? Not just African languages. People in Asia, is the language apart from China? Is the language being represented?
So I can actually say that yes, you're right, the global South. But beyond the global South, China is actually more represented than so many others because they're doing their own thing. In the UK here, we have 4 nations. Okay, I don't know. We have England, we have Scotland, we have Wales, we have Northern Ireland. Apart from English, the rest of the languages there are low resourced. So, and there are so many European languages that are low resourced. So I've told you there are 7,000 languages in the world. Most of them are alive, being spoken by human beings in millions, thousands, maybe for the fewest of them, and thousands. But only about 10, 20 maybe that you can actually see feature in most of the NLP conferences. Majority of the world's languages are struggling. English is very dominant and continues to be because nobody goes on Twitter or Facebook or on emails and do not speak English. If you don't know how to speak, you learn, right? That's what we do there. And by doing that, you keep generating more data for English alone. It doesn't happen with other languages. So we have to be very, very, like I said, intentional. We have to know that this is what we want to do. As someone asked me when the world is biased, why bother? Yeah, if you listen to one of the podcasts we did, I and one other guy from Ghana did for BBC, you see an old woman who had arthritis and something couldn't always get up to switch on the light. So it was easy, but we have things like Echo and Siri and other technologies that we can leverage to build voice to action kind of tool. And the guy did it for a local, I think Twi, a local Ghanaian language, and the grandmother could now use it to do a number of things, could speak their own language. They don't speak English very well, can speak their own language to give voice commands to switch on the lights and off, to switch on the television and back on. So can sit in a place comfortably and do some of these things. And then can also top up their phone without touching the phone, speak to it and then and tell it to top up and so on. So we have a need. We have the rest of the world needs to use these technologies. They need to use it. If you are administering healthcare in any part of the world, like my friend Blessing said, and you have a tool that works there, and the tool works on, say, medical records, so you can probably get medical records, scan it, and extract information from that. And it happens that now sees this medical record in, I don't know, a language that it hasn't seen before. What does it do? Is there an OCR technology that will be able to extract it for them? So you have to build something on top of that to make sure that other regions leverage already existing technology. We don't know reinventing the wheel. We're just like fine tuning it to make sure that it supports those people. Yeah. So I think that's the question. I mean, I don't know if I've answered it yet, but
okay. I think you've done justice to that.
Yeah. I think the question was what we will do, but I went around to just confirm that it's not just the Global South and it's not just Africans. What we are doing is what we will do is what we are doing. We're insisting on tools that will support this language, however it's built.
Okay, I'll take one more question. I think that might be the last one. Okay, Chinedu Chibo says that any practical suggestion on how to reduce development costs for more inclusive NLP applications? One major barrier is economic. High upfront development costs, narrow long-term market opportunity. So he's talking about a way of reducing development costs for NLP, for inclusive NLP applications. So anyway.
Okay. So one of the recommendations I made in my slides is that the collected data, which big firms and companies, funding agencies, NGOs are funding to collect, should be available. That's number one. It should be available and accessible. There is no reason why they should be behind any kind of paywall or register, or your organization will register. You know, if you come to the West, you have universities registered to have access to everything. You have universities in Africa that don't. So no matter how you try, you can't get it unless you pay money. So I'm advocating that they should be available. There are so many platforms that have almost everything you need now in development, from Specie platform to Hugging Face platform. And I'm talking about both tools and data and so on. And these transformer models that we use now have been fine-tuned for different purposes in different languages by people who are working on their own, possibly funded to do that, and they make it available. So we're just advocating for open source and open access policy in all these things. So that will reduce the cost. The other thing is that the compute itself, which is another key problem. So when you have the data, the training will require that you have the machine to compute it, all right? Depending on the part of the world you are in, there are minimal amount of compute resources available that you can use, which companies like Google will make available. For instance, if you go on Google Colab, you can use a GPU on Google Colab, a TPU even on Google Colab, without necessarily paying for it. If you want to do something substantial, maybe you have to pay and so on. So you can leverage that to at least practice and learn. And then you can some of these commercial firms, to be fair to them, they have studentships or research sponsorships or grants and all that can also leverage. Then join research communities. For instance, in Masakane, they are strong enough to always ask for what they need. And Lacuna, again, can fund data collection and all that. So yeah, I completely agree with you. When we were starting, it was a problem, but it's easy enough. I think it's just understanding where to look for. To look for these resources, what you need. For Blessing, for quite a number of years now, Black in AI has also been funding people to travel from different parts of the world to go to major conferences in AI. And when you get there, you also have a network of support structures that can help you with some of the other resources you might need. So I just suggest you be positive. Come to platforms like this. Thank you guys for organizing this, and keep in touch with the people you meet here about what's coming up. So there are places you can go to, and then you start without spending money. And then beyond that, when you begin to do something a bit more expanded, definitely you would have something to show to apply for more funding. I don't know the level you are operating on, whether you have done postgraduate programs or not. If not, you can also apply for a funded postgraduate program that puts you in a place where you have access to the resources that you might need. Yeah, that's what I might suggest for now.
Okay, thank you very much for your response. I guess Chinedu Chibu, that answers your question. The next one here is not actually a question. I think Dennis Nkweteyin is asking for the time. Actually, the time is 12 noon or 12 p.m. is EST, that's Eastern Standard Time, and we started at that Eastern Standard at 12. That's when we started. Like we started like 2 minutes before the time actually. So I wonder if that is actually the time that we start. It's actually 12. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So maybe it's just a confusion because it was daylight savings time. So we moved over an hour ahead on the weekend.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Some people may have forgotten that Eastern Standard Time is a little later now.
I get it right now. I get it. I think
Yeah.
that's what happened.
So I think that was the issue. Yeah. So we started at noon.
Usually a problem.
We started at noon, but some people may have joined late thinking.
We should have possibly communicated that the time has changed for us. That means we are 1 hour below, I guess. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. I think if we have Dr. Jude, Professor Jude here, okay, he's here. Our director, Professor Jude, I will hand over to him for a closing speech or a closing remark, and I also say thank you to Dr. Ezeani for his good talk today. Up on the screen is our next speaker, which is going to be in 2 weeks, and that is Dr. Stephen Gabriel. He's going to talk to us about lessons learned from AI applications in AI. So Professor Jude, over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Okwa-Kiri. And Dr. Ezeani, I really appreciate you taking your time, putting this together and sharing this great knowledge with us. It's very vital at the onset of this community that we are trying to build. Thank you so much. I want to thank our partner, CIFAL York, for putting this together and working hand in glove with us to ensure that we put this together. Thank you so much, Francisco. Thank you very much for handling this for us. To everyone present here, AI for PEP is home, is that community where we come together as people that care about our communities, care about using digital One Heart to solve issues in our community, and care about learning from each other. I hope that some of you that have done a lot of work in the past in COVID-19, you will reach out to come and share that knowledge with us. We're here to learn from each other and support each other. Share what was working in Colombia so that somebody in Nigeria or somebody in Kenya, somebody in Ghana can learn from you. Share what was working in Singapore so that somebody that is found in Venezuela can learn from you. Please, we are in need of speakers. Everybody is allowed to come in at any time and said, I want to present at this particular time, indicate your availability, and CFA York will try to schedule you so that you can come and share your knowledge with us. This series will continue, and when we finish the first round, we'll move to the second one. So we need as many speakers as possible. Again, it's about forming communities. There are many aspects. If you want to volunteer in AI for PEP in many different aspects, do reach out. I want to thank you all for your time, for coming every other week so that we share knowledge together. I want to say that we'll continue in 2 weeks, and you have seen the next speaker, and I'm looking forward to having all of you here with us. Thank you so much. God bless you and have a great day.
Thank you.
At this time, I think we have come to the end of the webinar. Francisco, over to you. Thank you everyone for coming.
Yes, thank you everybody, and thank you Dr. Ezeani for that presentation. And thank you to everyone who attended.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So the video, just in case, and the link will be made available. I think it's on CFA York email address, web page. You will get the link, the YouTube, and the link on the website, just in case you want to have access to it. And Dr. Ezeani's email, I put it on the question and answer on the chat space for you to be able to contact him directly if you need the further explanation or if you need the slide. We'll also share the slide on the website.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, the chat will expire after this call, right? So
yes, I just sent it to them before now, like when you were speaking, that's when I sent it.
Okay. All right then. Thank you guys for having me.
Yes. Bye-bye, sir.